If you were at DisruptHR 3.0 here in May, you'll remember my story of how I became the gardener. After a layoff, I was getting busy in the garden and realized that everything I was doing out there is exactly the same as what we do in human resources. And that's how I became the gardener. My story that night was more of the organizational side, the structures, processes, HR functions that run our organizations. But tonight is my personal story that I wanted to share with you. When I was laid off, my world suddenly got a lot smaller very quickly. And I realized that my network was as large as the organizations where I had worked. So as part of my journey, it became really important for me to grow my network in new ways and connect with people in new ways. This is my team now. These are our dogs, Banjo and Molly. And Banjo recently said to me, "Mom, we really love you and these meetings that we seem to have at least one today, but it's time that you connect with other humans." Maslow had it right. We need connection. I need connection, and I'm sure you do too. And it's hard to do that when we're moving so fast in our lives like Julie talked about. So how do we get there? How do we build those connections? How do we connect with each other? For me, it was learning how to do that by telling my story. The more I told my story, and when I tell you, I tell everyone my story, the HVAC guy comes to the house, he gets a tour of the garden. The more I told my story, the more all of you told me your stories. Ryan is a sales rep who sold me an RPO solution and quickly reached out to me to tell me about his favorite tomato fertilizer, and it let me know that I wasn't alone. Leanne works for a staffing company, and our conversation quickly turned to how she grows avocado plants from seed on her windowsill in her apartment in Philly with her gardening helper, Peta the cat. Rob cuts my hair, and every few months when I go there, instead of sitting in the chair and trading gossip stories, we trade garden stories. I give him bags of tomatoes. He tells me how he and his children grow peas and eat them right from the plants. And he taught me how to overwinter geraniums, so I'm going to try that this year. Tracy, her first language isn't English, so sometimes we struggle to communicate. But our shared language is our love of plants, and she proudly showed me her cactuses that are starting to flower. It's also about community. AJ works with my husband, and what turns out, not only do we love tomatoes, she and I both really love the Phillies, and was so excited when I found this green bean in my garden shaped like the retro Phillies pea. She couldn't wait to put it on her screensaver. Christy and I share our talents as well. She gifted us these beautiful eggs from her hens. She calls them her girls, and yes, each one of them has a name. Mike and I are connected through our local SHRM chapter, and we've exchanged pleasantries before, but it wasn't until a recent meeting when he sat down next to me and said, "I can't wait to tell you about my fig tree and how I finally got my first figs," and told me the story about how his fig tree is part of his family legacy. Fred is 83, is a veteran, and lives across the street from us, and he teaches me every time we talk about our gardens. And he talks to me about what fertilizer he uses and lends us tools, teaches me recipes, and tells me stories about how his family grew tomatoes for Campbell's soup. So he is sure to get part of these recipes that I share with him. The last person I want to tell you about is Victoria. She's my bestie. She's 8 years old and lives next door. When she comes over, I teach her all about the plants in my garden, how you rub the peppermint leaves together and they smell and taste like bubble gum, and that we planted eggplant plants this year that quickly grew as tall or taller than she is. The other thing that Victoria does for me is that she plants these beautiful rocks that hold a really special place in my garden. As you can see, my network has expanded in size, in texture, and layer. When I gave you vegetables, you gave me stories about your grandmother growing roses, or that your grandfather, like mine, grew purple basil. You've inspired me, you've given me ideas, you've educated me, you've given me opportunity. I encourage you to keep telling your stories, share them with more people, spread your seeds to see what will grow, and see what you can cultivate, just as you have cultivated me. I am Anastasia, I'm the gardener.